I can feel a new day coming. Change is on the way. I can hear the wheels of progress humming. I'm just waiting on election day. You have tried to keep me quiet, but I have things to say. Got a voice and it won't be silent. You're gonna hear it on election day. I'll be here on election.
From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf, and you may have noticed that our show doesn't almost ever cover politics. And that is because it is so much better left in the hands of any other public radio show, just not us. But there are exceptions to every rule, and the people you're going to meet today are quite exceptional indeed. They are not your run-of-the-mill Washington insiders with their private jets and their elite connections and lobbyists on speed dial. Paperboy Love Prince is an artist, rapper, and activist. They're also an openly non-binary and queer person who's running for president. And their platform is love. We'll chat with them a little bit later, but first, there's one candidate who's found a creative way to pique the media's interest.
Literally anybody else.
Literally anybody else.
First name, literally anybody. Last name, else.
Meet Mr. Anybody Else. First name, literally.
That's my legal name.
Yep.
I don't actually even know what to call you. Do I call you literally or Mr. Anybody Else? What do you prefer? I respond to all three.
That was Army veteran and former 7th grade math teacher, Dustin Ebey. Well, he used to be Dustin Ebey. He legally changed his name to literally anybody else. I asked him, why legally change your name and run for president?
I am all about solving problems. And a lot of people see the problem as we don't have appropriate choices for Congress, for president, we don't really have much of a say in Supreme Court nominations, but what are the ways we can have that kind of influence? And so if I were to run, I could, it's one of those things, a lot of people say, I could do better, but how would you actually get there? It takes so much money to actually run just to get attention. When you go through the FEC website, there's over 1,000 people who have registered to run as president of the United States. And getting any kind of attention costs money. So it came to mind, I was like, what if we could have it so literally anybody else could appear on the ballot? This was something that came to mind around the 2016 season. And it resurfaced the following election in 2020. And I did some research then, just as running with literally anybody else as an alias, Dustin, literally anybody else, Ebey. And many states don't even allow an alias. Like, for instance, Bill Clinton had to run as William Clinton in some states. And so the reality there was like, okay, to get this actually on the ballot, somebody would have to change their legal name to literally anybody else. And that's just ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to do that. But when this election started coming around, I had the idea again, like, what if I did it? What if I stepped up and changed my name? Because that would save a lot of time and a lot of money just by virtue of the connecting factor of the name itself. Literally anybody else runs for president. Because I knew I wasn't the only one that wanted something else. So I went online, I filed the paperwork. When they sent me the confirmation, I went in person in front of the judge and she changed my name to literally anybody else. She was not amused because it's one of those things without the context of it, it really does feel gimmicky. But the purpose is this gets interviews, this gets attention. It has that connecting factor to so many people. I mean, Dustin Ebey running for president of the United States wouldn't catch anybody's attention.
I've changed my name legally, and changing it is not difficult. Like the actual process of going in and, talking to the judge and raising your hand and getting that paperwork. Changing your name in that sense is not that hard, but changing everything else, your social security card, your driver's license, your passport, if you have one, your medical records, your employer, your insurance. That's the really hard part about changing your name. Did you go to that length, or was it you just needed it on this name change paperwork?
So for the most part, it's just needed on the name change paperwork. My name is legally, literally anybody else. One of the issues I'm finding now is no one wants to believe it's a legitimate name, even with the court documents. I still have the clipped driver's license. So in situations where I need to present an ID, I have to present both. My name is literally anybody else, but this is my license for who I used to be. Because I am going back to Dustin Ebey in November, well, maybe December after the election. The point of this was just to consolidate the feeling of Americans who resonated with this.
What kind of pushback do you get, and how do you respond to it?
Pushback is fairly rare, but when I do get it, it's people who are worried that I'll spoil the election for one candidate or the other. A lot of times on, like, especially TikTok, they'll be like, we cannot have another Trump administration. Or for the Trump people, they're like, I cannot afford another 4-year effect on my grocery bill or something to that nature. And I think Trump's dictator for a day stokes that fear among his anti-supporters.
So what do you say when people tell you that they fear that you running with this really great name that a lot of people really love and may feel really drawn to vote for? What do you say when they say you're going to ruin the election one way or the other?
The soundbite version is you can't spoil what's already rotten. The election is supposed to be our way of putting who represents us on the podium. Now, if Trump supports you, if you are aligned with everything that he's putting down, vote for him. If Harris is aligned with everything you want to be in that office, vote for them. My candidacy, my campaign is meant to represent the majority of Americans in the middle of the aisle, the ones who feel disenfranchised by the lack of choices we have. There are far more people that tell me that they support what I'm doing, that they're thankful for what I'm doing, that they had lost all hope, whose prior form of protests before finding out about me was just to not vote at all. And I highly discourage that. You know, a lack of votes. I mean, think about this. The primary elections, less than 10% of Americans participated in that, which means that the choices that we have to choose from were decided on by a staggering minority of voters today. And that was when Biden was the candidate. Now, that's probably cut in half because Harris was not voted for in a primary. And that's not democracy. When you have single-digit percent of the population deciding who gets to run, that's an oligarchy. We talk smack about Russia for being that kind of way, but now here we are being the hypocrite.
So if you win, what would be the first thing you'd want to do in office? What's the biggest thing that you want to make a difference with?
The first thing that I would like to put on the agenda is signing an executive order to audit all the major bureaucracies in the government. To say, we need to look at the system that we have today, get everything out on the table, decide what's clean, what's dirty. We need to clean it all. We need to open things up to be transparent, like we're promised, just by virtue of having representatives, and, you know, fix the things that are broken. Remember, I said earlier, my thing is when I see a problem, I have a drive to fix it. Well, step one of that is identifying your problems, is, you know, popping open the hood, looking at what you have and identifying your problems. Now, as a political outsider, I will fully admit that I may not have the skills to properly identify what is broken and what needs to be fixed. I'm just looking at the effects of, you know, what it spits out. So a huge part of, you know, me as president is identifying the people who have that specialty, to find the corruption hunters, to find the bird dogs of the world who can say, hey, this right here is messed up. This is how it's messed up. And then identify the people who can fix it, who are most appropriate for the positions of, cleaning up the country, for fixing it, for bringing us back to what we stand for in the sense of like moral integrity, for efficiency, for realistic expectations and how we are going to progress to the future.
I have to talk to you about merch. Your merch situation is so interesting because it doesn't matter whether someone really votes for you or plans on voting for you. They may be incredibly attracted to your merch. There are t-shirts, mugs, hats that say literally anybody else, President 2024. I'm curious about when you saw the most uptick in sales.
That I actually do not have the information for. Because of FEC rules, I had to contract out or license out my merch. It was the initial purchase of the domain name back in, I think, March, February of last year. It was just to sell merch, like the yard signs, the bandit signs, the shirts, the hats, and whatever, that I was going to design myself and then just pay some printing company to do it. And now I can't do that because it's an official campaign. I have to collect the name, the number, the address, and the occupation of everyone who buys.
What happens to the money?
So most of it goes to them, the production of it. And so of any purchase from the store on my website, I think we get about a 40% margin.
Is this something you can continue doing even after the election is over, regardless of whether or not you win? Obviously not with the 2024 in it, but is this something that as long as you live, because I imagine this is a sentiment that may never go away, are you planning on continuing to sell this sort of merch under this literally anybody else?
As far as converting it from a political to a purely commercial, I don't think I want to do that anymore. Even after this campaign, when I decide to change my name back, I'm considering forming a organization to kind of set the stage for the next person, to set the stage for someone who can make a difference, to make a calendar of hit points that anyone who wishes to make a difference, this is the playbook, this is the rule book that I've discovered doing this, because a majority of my time is spent researching, what to do next, what's coming up, how do I back plan the needs to achieve this deadline. If I get regular people to take part in this, it could be as easy as, hey, we want to prop up John Smith or Sandy Blinken or whoever to be the presidential candidate. Go ahead and sign the petition and we'll send it in and just theoretically have a president on the ballot within the first few weeks, and using the literally anybody else platform as a way to facilitate that. As a way to keep throwing the Hail Mary passes. I don't know what the situation is going to be in another 4 years, but if the pattern holds true that we keep getting more and more intense on our divide, there's going to be a breaking point. There's going to be a point where the support for this reaches its critical mass and tips over. One of the biggest hesitations that people have is, oh, your name is interesting, it does get attention, but not enough people are behind you for me to get behind you. If I had support already, a lot more support would come. I think it's something similar you see with advertising or just marketing. The more people that see you, the more people that are going to see you.
Yeah, 101.
Yeah, that shows off the advantage of the name, literally anybody else. And it's not just because it's a weird, funny name. It's the fact that it connects, that people do want literally anybody else. This is a real run for president.
That was literally anybody else. His name used to be Dustin Ebey. We recorded this conversation on July 29th, 2024, and apparently Mr. Else isn't the only one who thinks the government needs an audit. A little over a month after recording with Mr. Else, Donald Trump said he'd task Elon Musk with auditing the entire federal government, if reelected. When we get back, what exactly does literally anybody else hope to get out of this? Why go through all this effort to make a point?
Even if I lose, I can win.
And if Paperboy Love Prince doesn't win in 2024, it'll still be a history-making presidential run.
No one like me has actually ever run for president before. Like, in the history of it, no one ever has.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me.
I'm gonna run for president. Watch him run. I'm gonna run for president. Watch him run. I'm gonna run for president. Watch him run. I'm gonna run for president.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Today you're meeting two unconventional presidential candidates. In a little bit, you'll hear from Paperboy Love Prince. They're a fashion designer, artist, and rapper who's hoping to become our country's first openly queer, non-binary president. And how do they plan on solving the world's big problems? Love. But let's get back to my conversation with literally anybody else. That is his actual name. He legally changed it from Dustin Ebey in the run-up to his campaign for president. In the event that you do not win on Election Day, what do you hope happens on that day?
What do I hope happens? I'm hoping that even if we don't win, that the needles are shaken up for the parties, that the parties are shaken up to the point where they have to start addressing the concerns of the people in the middle. Right now, the parties are focused so much on the extremes within themselves that they've completely alienated the rest of America. They cannot secure the party nomination in the primaries unless they appeal to those that don't share the values, that don't share the views of the rest of America. Where I said less than 10%. The consequence of that is when we get to the position where everyone is voting, we don't have an appropriate choice. If I take enough votes away from both sides. Think about this. Wisconsin was won by Joe Biden last time by less than 26,000 votes. If there are 30,000 people willing to vote literally anybody else in Wisconsin from both sides, either candidate could steal those votes back by appealing to the middle, by appealing to the moderates. And if one side does it, the other side has to follow suit or they lose it all. And if both sides go back to moderation, that's a win. Even if I lose, I can win. I changed the name because I was wanting to know what would be the most efficient and effective way for me to make a presidential candidate. After the election itself, personally, I still have mouths to feed, so I'm going to have to get a job. I might hop back in my food truck and get that going again.
Wait, what kind of food truck?
Cajun. I grew up in Louisiana.
What's the name of the food truck?
Woodrow's.
What's your favorite thing on the menu?
Alligator.
Ooh, swamp puppies.
Yeah, we serve blackened alligator.
What's it taste like? Besides wonderful.
It doesn't really have, so if you don't cook it right, it kind of tastes like gamey chicken. So we use brown sugar in our blackened seasoning, so it comes out a nice sweetened balance, and it's sassy bon. My Louisianians will know what that means.
Yeah. I have to ask the most uncomfortable question, which is, if not you, who do you hope wins, Trump or Kamala Harris?
You are literally asking me to choose between what's in my mind the worst of two evils. And I can't do it. It's one of those, I changed my name, like it's so bad. I changed my name and got the time it was Biden, but still, like If the Democrats had switched to somebody I could get behind, I probably would, just say, all right, I'll put out the information I have, throw out my policies, and then I'll back it up. But we've been traded dirt for mud.
Who is a politician that you feel aligned with?
I would have felt comfortable. I would have been fine if it had been Haley versus Dean Phillips. That would have been okay with me. It still might not have fully aligned with them, but I could choose between them once I got to know them more. Again, it's where do you devote your attention into investigating what these politicians are behind when they're not the ones that are running? I would love for a candidate that I could actually, there's a website, is like who I side with. You pick it solely off of policies and your intensity with those passions. If we could just vote on policies and then let the people who support them fall in line, that would be a much better system in my mind. I know it's wishful thinking, but you don't change your name and run for president unless you're a dreamer.
For those who are tuning in and they're just wrapping their heads around the fact that I'm talking to somebody who's running for president who changed his name to literally anybody else, what do you hope they hear and like the core of what you believe to compel them to seriously consider voting for you running as literally anybody else?
We don't have to despair about who we elect in November. The system itself is designed to allow us to put who represents us in office. We were warned at the outset, do not form political parties. It will not end well. And we are living through the consequences of their existence. All right, we are as polarized as we've ever been. So what I'm offering with my candidacy is the Hail Mary of Hail Mary campaigns. The football has been thrown. All I'm asking is for you to have the faith to run out and catch it. It doesn't take much to influence the election in a way that benefits us all. Like I said earlier about Wisconsin, if we get enough that, shifts the needle to the middle, that has an overall benefit, because it wouldn't affect just the presidency. That would affect the politics the whole way through. With the platform that this name has given me, with this campaign has given me, I foresee the ability to recruit people at more local levels of government to be able to make the difference. It's one of those things, we shouldn't have the rich, we shouldn't have the elite being the only ones who decide what we choose from. There was an election here for a state representative. They had spent upwards of like $750,000. And when I looked at the data for how many votes were cast, it was like under 10,000 total. That kind of money shouldn't be the main factor on what happens. And I'm saying to your audience here, to your viewers, to your voters, that we don't have to live this way. It would be a struggle. It is a huge leap of faith to, place your vote with me. But I can promise you that it would be worth it in the long run. Any aspect of your true beliefs that you can put out there, I highly, highly encourage you. Take that step forward.
Well, literally anybody else, thank you so much for talking with me.
It's been a pleasure.
We've got loads of ideas and plans to compare. We're running for president. Would you like to share?
Learn more about literally anybody else's platform at ctpublic.org/audacious. Okay, now picture this. You're at a forum in New Hampshire with a bunch of presidential candidates. On the stage, there's a sea of mostly older, white faces. But there's one candidate that catches your eye. They're young, of Puerto Rican, Colombian, and Panamanian descent, and they're not wearing a navy suit. They are wearing a gold-embroidered turban, wide white plastic-rimmed glasses, and a big, silky red jacket with puffy shoulder pads. Around their neck is a chain with a Game Boy Advance on it, a handheld video game console. This candidate is none other than Paperboy Love Prince. And they were one of 20 presidential candidates at the Lesser Known Candidate Forum in New Hampshire in December of 2023.
We need more policies based strictly on love. We need policies that give positive reinforcement. The same way that you can get a ticket for doing something bad or doing something negative, you should be able to get a love ticket for doing something positive in your community and helping out your fellow people.
Paperboy previously interned at the U.S. House of Representatives and for the Supreme Court of the United States. In 2020, they ran for Congress in New York. And in 2021, they entered the race to become New York City's mayor. And their pronouns?
My rule is any pronoun as long as it's with love.
And love is the centerpiece of their platform. When we connected, they greeted me with their slogan.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. Thank you so much for having me.
I asked Paperboy Love Prince what made them want to run for president.
No one like me has actually ever run for president before. Like in the history of it, no one ever has. And
Now, when you say no one like me, what do you mean by that?
I mean, an artist, an internet artist, somebody who's thinking outside of the box in a way and focusing on love in a very specific way. Also doing mutual aid and protest work and being one of the first non-binary people or the first non-binary person to run for president. And I'm definitely not supported and financially backed by super rich people. For example, this campaign, we probably all in spent $1,500 or maybe $2,000 of my own money. There's so many, it's hard for me to describe myself and why this is so important because I'm more focused on doing it. But yeah, I also think it's super silly that I'm running for president too.
Why?
I think it's a great shakeup of the American political system because so many of these candidates are packaged, pre-packaged, pre-bought folks that are made to be like, oh, hey guys, this is our Latina woman that's gonna talk about progressive politics. Hey guys, this is our Black gay guy that's gonna talk about progressive politics. Hey guys, this is our single father or single mother that's and they'll give you something that seems like it's a new representation of a person, but they're actually backed by the same corporate interests that have been backing the people that people are upset about all this time. So I feel like it's a really fresh new take, and I'm doing it in a purposefully silly way and serious way at the same time, which I think is like a good way to shake things up.
I'd love to hear about your platform about love, why it matters to you, and what kind of reactions you've gotten from people who are like, wait a minute. Love in politics? Really?
Love is so important because that's what everybody wants. At the end of the day, folks are working hard and sacrificing for their families and trying to be able to buy a house and put food on the table and all of these things because they want to find love, because they want to give love, because they want to keep love. This is kind of what, in essence, makes us human. And we've taken the humanity out of politics completely. So there are a lot of reactions we get from people when I talk about love, and they're like, oh, come on, what you're going to do about the economy, or how does that look like, or this and that. And like right now, a lot of the issues that we see in kind of the culture wars, gender wars, race wars, sexuality wars that are going on right now are based around the lack of opportunity of love and cultural growth. So part of what we're trying to do is create opportunities for folks to come together. And one of the things I talk about is love centers, where you can come together and maybe learn a new skill, learn different languages. You can hang out and meet your neighbors, where kids can come and have a safe place to play, where our seniors can be able to like learn new skills and all of these things. So For me, there's no places like that. And during COVID, you saw the government can make a concentrated effort with hundreds of millions of dollars to separate us. They can do it, and they did do it. It was called social distancing. There was signs all over New York City, and for good reason telling people to separate. But now, when we need to come together, when we need to unify, it seems like it's out of the question to find ways for folks to do that. And we don't have leaders who are running, who have a track record of bringing people together in a real way. And that's why I feel like it's so important to have this message of love and really have it untainted and pure.
If not yourself, who would you vote for president?
I can't in good conscience support any of the previous candidates or the current candidates, knowing what I know about the American political system and how deep they've gone through it and not called some of the stuff out. It's hard to support, you know? I mean, there's so much money in politics that, from my understanding, you can put a potato for president, and with the backing that any of the candidates have that are the major party candidates, you can put a baked potato for president, no seasoning, and it could still win because it has the media with it. It has all of these millions of dollars with it, and nobody is calling it out. It doesn't matter who it is. It's the money that's behind them. And even looking at other countries, how they run elections, for example, in America, one of the ways that they choke out smaller candidates is the long election cycle. People are running for president for 2 years, 3 years. I mean, to keep that campaign up for that time, just paying for staff alone, not adding in all the marketing costs and all the different types of fees for lawyers and accountants, all these things, it's a lot of money. Whereas in other countries running for certain offices, it might be 4 weeks, 6 weeks as an election time. The elections in America are too long, and this benefits the rich. So yeah, that's one of the major reasons. Like, if there was somebody running that was calling that stuff out, and like, even for example, Bernie Sanders, right? There was a point where I was like into what Bernie was doing, and nobody is going to be perfect on everything. But Bernie Sanders is a person that did call out a lot of the corporate interests in politics, but left it out when it came to a lot of his colleagues. And it sucks to have to ask someone to sacrifice themselves and their entire career to call out what's right. But if no one does that, then we never get there, you know? And especially the folks that people really believe are on their side, you know, their endorsement and their word carries more weight. So then when they're not calling it out, it becomes a problem. So for me, as much as I am a candidate for president, I'm also an educator who's here to educate people who have been purposefully misled by the public school system and the media on our electoral process and all of that.
That's Brooklyn's own Paperboy Love Prince. They're running for president, and their platform is love. After the break, what does Paperboy Love Prince say to people who think they take votes away from candidates who might be much more likely to win?
As soon as you start trying to remove choice from people and options from people, that is anti-American and that's anti-democratic.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned.
It's election day and I'm alone in the parade and I wonder how we're gonna get by. It's election day and all its promises we made and I pray we don't sleep late on election day.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf.
Say spread love! Spread love! Spread love! Spread love! Spread love! Spread love! Make some noise!
That's Paperboy Love Prince, back in 2020, hyping a crowd as they ran for Congress in New York's 7th congressional district. And for the 2024 election, they decided to run for president. And love is their platform. But I wondered how that love might manifest when it comes to policy, so let's get back to our conversation.
So, if you won, what would be the first thing that you would get done? Like you're salivating just thinking about it.
Finding a way to lift the cost of housing burden on so many people. The cost of housing in America is crazy. And I mean, last election, I guess, student loan debt was a thing, and like healthcare was a thing that was holding a lot of people down, and they still are. Housing is a necessity. Like, you don't have to go to college. You can, it is, recommended by many to, but you don't have to go to college. Whereas you kind of have to have some place to live, even if it's a van or a tent. You have to have some place to live, and right now it's just too expensive. I mean, one, from top to bottom, for our seniors who are on a fixed income and they maybe own their home, there's a lot of places in America where, when they can no longer afford the property taxes on their home based on the value of their home rising, they can lose their home. They can have their home taken. And this is what's been happening in New York City. Folks who bought their homes a long time ago, now that their homes are worth millions of dollars, they can't afford the taxes on them, and their homes are taken away, and people are buying them up for cheap and then renting them out to people at astronomical prices. So that's affecting our seniors. Then, the younger generations coming in, just trying to afford to move out and find a place to live. It's way too expensive. I mean, like, the numbers are just way too expensive. And this is what happens when you have rich people in office. They don't get that. That's too much money for people to be paying for rent based on their income, the average income of folks in a lot of these places. So, and then the burden on the middle-aged people, a lot of their kids are moving back home or never leaving. And then it's a big problem. And I feel like it's so embarrassing, because homelessness is so embarrassing that folks don't want to talk about it and talk about how bad it is, talk about how much they're struggling. There's no reason people making six-figure incomes are still living paycheck to paycheck because of the cost of living and the cost of housing. So for me, that is the number one issue. And like, living in New York City, I feel like it's ahead of the rest of the country in a lot of ways. There's a lot of issues and social issues that hit New York first, and then it becomes an issue for the rest of the country. Example is COVID, right? It was a problem here first, and then everybody gets locked up. So, you can use New York as a place, as a case study, to see how things are going to affect the rest of the country. And the homelessness here, I mean, I'll go out to walk my dog at night, right? And the amount of people that are like living in their cars just on the street, it's a ton of people. And these are the numbers I feel like that aren't counted, or things that just aren't talked about. So I'm being long-winded, but yeah.
So your Secretary of HUD would probably be Jimmy McMillan. He's the guy who started the Rent is Too Damn High party. Do you remember that?
I do. He was like super on it. And that's the energy that we need. I mean, that slogan, like, that's a unlosable slogan right now. Like, any of the presidential candidates adopt that and adopt that energy about that issue, but they won't, because it's tied into property values. The rents need to be high. And I'm saying this as this kind of their vision. The rents need to be high so that property values stay high, so that all of these things keep going up. And that's where most people's wealth is tied up, is the valuation of their homes and all these things. So it's a very tricky thing. And yeah, folks are incentivized not to talk about it.
When you successfully got your name on the ballot for the New Hampshire primaries and you saw it for the first time, how did that feel?
It honestly felt legendary. So many people in the state of New Hampshire are going to have the opportunity to vote for Paperboy Love Prince for president of the United States. That's an amazing option. That's an amazing feature of the United States government. It's a small step for me, but I think it's a giant leap for humankind. It felt like the beginning of a journey of a long time. And we really can make President happen at some point, you know? I might just be that delusional, but I feel like it's super possible because I realize the people that are doing this work, it's not as many as you would think. Like you kind of think that like, oh, for president, there's a ton of people that are consistently doing this work, and they really aren't. There are not enough leaders that are trying to do the work in their community and also do it in a through the electoral process as well.
What do you say to people who don't like the fact that you're running or don't like the fact that you've got your name on this ballot and they say, hey, any distraction from the two main competitors, you're going to take away votes. What do you say to them? Or what do you wish they could see a little differently?
Well, what I say is, paper, yeah. That's honestly what I say. But also, I let them know that that's the most un-American thing that you can say. As soon as you start trying to remove choice from people and options from people, that is anti-American and that's anti-democratic. And it's a learned behavior that folks have been taught that favors the ruling class. Like we do that in nothing else. Like when you go out for a restaurant, you're like, all right, you can only choose two restaurants. All right. And don't even think about another restaurant. Or when you're putting music on you can only have two artists. Don't even think about choosing another artist. You can only read two books. You can only bring two. And like, we don't do that really in anything else, but yet the most important decision, collective decision for our country, we kind of like quickly say, okay, it's only going to be these two people, and we don't have a really good process of it. Also, we live in a representative democracy. So what happens with all of your elected officials, not just the president, but your mayor, your city council members, your Congress people, your senators, you vote for them one time and they're making hundreds, maybe thousands of decisions a day on your behalf. So you basically get so little say in what is done. You only get a choice once every 4 years to say anything. And then that's basically you signing off on them making thousands of decisions for you and your family that will affect them literally for the rest of their lives. But these people somehow convince you to shrink your choices even more. It's honestly insane. And this is the type of thinking that in the post-internet world, hopefully will be crumbled because it just doesn't make sense. Honestly, representative democracy doesn't even make sense for most people.
So on election day, what are you going to do?
Well, I'm voting for Paperboy Love Prince for president. I feel like it would be disingenuous for me to run this campaign for president and not vote for myself.
And you'll have to write yourself in, yeah?
Yeah, I would write myself in. I fully exercise that option. You only get one choice every 4 years on this matter. So that just is what it is.
So who do you hope wins besides you?
I pray whoever wins that can bring peace to America and the world, and whoever can bring unity to America and the world instead of division. And if Kamala Harris wins, it feels like there'll be a large portion of the country very upset because someone ran a campaign for 3 months and already was in the White House for 4 years, and maybe they feel like they were pulled the okie doke on. Somebody said they were running and all of a sudden they give you another candidate 3 months before. So, and then also like the track record and the policies coming from her haven't been the futuristic look I feel like we need. And then you have Donald Trump, who's also like a front runner. And I feel like just the general energy of division that he's like so comfortable with sowing wouldn't be good either, and would also upset a lot of people and, could maybe cause some type of irreversible rift. And if I was a big fan of either one of them, I would not have been running for president. I would be happy to champion them. I would be happy to use my voice to elevate them as I've done in the past, and yeah, no.
So in the event that you don't become president this November,
Yes.
what will be next for you? What will your life be like afterwards?
I'm going to be super excited to announce my run for mayor of New York City. That isn't an official thing that's out yet, but I might as well say it here. And, when we did that in 2021, it was New York City's first ever ranked choice voting election. And we were able to get nearly 70,000 votes in that election. That's more people than the average city in America. So I'm excited to do it again because people follow the New York City mayor election and see what type of things are happening there to help inform them what may be coming in their community. So, yeah.
Well, you heard it here first. Paperboy Love Prince. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Of course. Super happy to be here. Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. Thank you so much.
We recorded this conversation on August 21st, 2024, and you can learn more about Paperboy Love Prince and their campaign at ctpublic.org/audacious. This show is always lovingly produced by Jessica Severin de Martinez, Khalil Rahman, Meg Fitzgerald, Robin Doyon Aitken, and Meg Dalton at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. If you like this episode, check out the one we did featuring another person who went all in on something. A man named Winter has devoted his entire life to having coffee at every single Starbucks in the world.
I am trying to take the long view of how do I organize my life in such a way that I can still be Starbucking when I'm 100.
And as for names, you'll love the show we did where the only thing the guests had in common was that all four of them were named Pat Smith. And since these candidates hit the streets, listen back to my conversation with Brandon Stanton. He's the photographer behind the super popular Instagram page, Humans of New York.
Say your life has been nothing but struggle, and you're carrying around this sense of meaningless and pain, like, why me? And then somebody comes up to you and they put it into a framework where suddenly it's a thing, it's a story that you and the struggle you went through and the insight you gained from it can suddenly reach out and give somebody else comfort who's going through that same thing. It's validated your struggle. It's given meaning where there's no meaning before.
And here's a look forward to some of the episodes the Audacious team is working on right now. We have conversations with people who have rare conditions like progeria that make them look a lot older than they actually are. Find out what it's like realizing you have a winning lotto ticket for $28 million. And a lawyer who only works with lottery winners talks about some really important do's and don'ts in case you ever win big. And we'll talk with two people who make a living psychically communicating with other people's pets. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Stay in touch with me on the socials at Kyone Wolf, and you can always send an email to audacious@ctpublic.org. Thanks for listening.
Somehow I know that